Hey guys, tonight we begin with a quiet story under the trees, where the air is soft, the ground cool, and the night seems to lean in to listen. Imagine yourself walking into that calm forest, where the rustle of leaves is slower than your breath, and the glow of starlight rests gently on the earth. A monk's voice carries through the branches, gentle and steady. In this stillness, someone is about to ask a question that touches the heart of everyone who has ever felt worn down by stress. Without knowing it, you might find a reflection of yourself in the shadows of this tale. And if you've ever thought stress was just a small thing, you'll see it can sneak up on you like an unexpected bill from a gym you never joined. You probably couldn't survive long carrying that invisible weight. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from right now? And what time is it for you? Drop a comment below and share it with me. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It was during the days when the Buddha spent his time in the quiet groves. His name had already spread far, and people came from distant places, carrying their worries like bundles too heavy to set down. One day, as the master spoke to his disciples, a middle-aged man approached, his young son beside him. The father's face was full of lines carved by worry. The son's eyes looked dim, his steps heavy, as if youth had slipped away too early. The Buddha glanced at them once and gently motioned for them to sit. The talk ended, the crowd dispersed, and the master invited the father to come closer. A father. Approaches, the forest had grown quiet after the teaching, the disciples dispersing like leaves carried by a breeze. Only one figure lingered, moving slowly, each step weighted with worry. He was a father, his hand gently resting on the shoulder of his young son. The boy's body seemed present, but his spirit somehow absent. His shoulders slumped as though he had lived decades longer than his age. The father guided him forward, eyes filled with both hope and exhaustion, the kind that only comes when someone has spent too many nights thinking about how to save someone they love. The Buddha raised his eyes toward them. With a slight gesture of his hand, he invited them closer, and they sank to the ground before him. Around them, the air shimmered with birdsong, fading into twilight. The father bowed deeply, then looked into the calm face before him. His voice trembled as he began to speak. "Teacher," he said, "I have traveled for 2 days to bring my son here. He is my only child, and though he is still young, he is always tired. His eyes no longer shine. He becomes irritated at even the smallest things, and when I look at him, I see someone who should be full of life, yet seems much older than his years. His hair has already begun to turn white. His sight grows weak. I've taken him to doctors, and they tell me his body is weighed down by stress. But when I try to explain this word stress, he does not understand it. He does not know what it means, where it comes from, or how to let it go. That is why I have come. I beg you, teach us what this truly is." The boy kept his gaze low, embarrassed to hear his struggles spoken aloud. His fingers picked at the grass beneath him, a small nervous movement, but the Buddha watched him without judgment, as though simply noticing a cloud pass across the sky. He leaned closer, and without a word, studied the boy's face, his eyes, even the rhythm of his breath. He gently held the boy's wrist, feeling the pulse, steady but faint. Then, after a long pause, he released his hand and turned his gaze back to the father. "Stress is not something anyone desires," the Buddha said, his voice carrying the softness of water over stone. "And yet, like termites hidden in wood, it eats away quietly until the whole house begins to crumble. People do not realize they live inside this pressure until it has already weakened them. But if one can learn to see clearly where stress is born and measure how far it has reached, then a person can also discover how to end it." The father leaned forward, eager for every word. The boy's eyes flickered upward, just for a moment, searching the master's face. Tell me, the Buddha continued, what happens when a person works with their hands, yet their mind is elsewhere, drifting in imagination? In that moment, the body is here, but the mind is far away. A distance opens between them. The greater the distance, the heavier the sense of being unwell. This gap between body and mind, that is stress. The father nodded slowly, as though finally given a language for the invisible struggle. The boy's breathing deepened, his shoulders no longer quite so heavy. The Buddha spoke again. Have you noticed how alive a person feels after playing a favorite game? Though their body may be tired, their spirit feels light. Why? Because in that play, body and mind move together, focused on the same moment. No distance is formed, and stress cannot take root. But when we labor at something that does not touch our heart, the body works here while the mind escapes somewhere else. That is when stress is born. The father closed his eyes for a moment, perhaps recalling his own life of constant labor, his mind often elsewhere, chasing worries of money and reputation. He sighed. The Buddha's voice remained calm. This is why a person must give their whole presence to one task at a time. Only then does the mind rest in the same place as the body. Only then does the storm of stress begin to clear. Silence fell between them, a silence thick enough to feel. The boy lifted his head slightly, as if hearing his life described for the first time. And then the master continued with a gentle but firm tone, "Yet this is only the beginning. Stress has many roots, and only by seeing them clearly can one learn to live free from them. There are 8 roots, in fact, and if a person learns to understand each of these, they will know how to loosen the weight they carry." The father bowed again, ready to listen, his son beside him, listening now too. And that is where the story deepens. Because in the next part, the Buddha reveals the very first root of stress, a trap so familiar that many of us fall into it every day without realizing. The endless chase of ambition. Let's step into that lesson together. The son's condition. The boy sat in silence, his posture sinking lower as though he wished he could disappear into the earth beneath him. His father's words had exposed all the things he tried to hide. The fatigue that clung to him even after sleep, the sharp irritation that flashed like lightning at the smallest disturbance, the way his vision blurred when he read, and the strands of white that had appeared in his hair far too soon. At only 20, he carried himself like a man who had already endured half a lifetime. The Buddha's eyes rested on him with the patience of a sky that never hurries the clouds. He did not scold. He did not rush to speak. Instead, he allowed the stillness of the grove to settle, letting the boy feel that here was a space where judgment would not follow. The rustle of leaves above and the fading sound of a bird became part of the pause, as though nature itself leaned closer to listen. Finally, the Buddha asked in a voice as gentle as the wind, "Tell me, young one, what is it that fills your days?" The boy shifted uncomfortably. His voice, when it came, was quiet. "I rise tired. I work because I must, but I feel no strength in it. My mind runs far ahead of me, imagining what might go wrong, replaying what has already failed. I find no rest even when I lie down, and the more I try to push these thoughts away, the louder they grow." The father bowed his head, ashamed, as though the boy's suffering was his own fault. The Buddha placed a hand lightly on the air between them, a gesture that seemed to say, "There is no blame here, only understanding." "Stress," the Buddha said, "is like carrying an invisible pack on your shoulders. You cannot see it, but you feel its weight with every step. Sometimes it grows heavier, not because of the world outside, but because of the world inside your own mind. It is not your body that betrays you, it is the distance between what your body is doing and what your mind is chasing." The boy's eyes lifted, and for the first time they held a flicker of curiosity. His lips parted slightly, as though he might ask a question, but instead he waited. The Buddha continued, "You are not weak because you feel this weight. You are simply unaware of how it came to rest on you, And once you see clearly, you will also learn how to put it down. The father let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for years. His shoulders sagged, but this time with relief rather than despair. At that moment, the Buddha leaned slightly closer. His words slowed, giving each one space to settle. When you eat, you must only eat. When you walk, you must only walk. When you breathe, you must only breathe. But you, young one, are eating while thinking of what will happen tomorrow. You are walking while regretting yesterday. You are breathing, but your thoughts are already miles away. This is why you feel as though life is slipping from you before it has even begun. The boy swallowed hard, the truth landing heavy. Yet with it came a strange lightness, as though someone had finally named the shadow that haunted him. He nodded slowly, a quiet acknowledgement. In the quiet, the Buddha offered one more image. Consider a lamp. When the flame is steady, it lights a whole room. But when the flame flickers wildly, it throws only confusion and shadows. Your mind is that flame. Let it rest, and your whole being becomes clear. The boy's fingers loosened around the grass he had been clutching. His breathing grew deeper, steadier. The father watched with cautious hope, his eyes glistening with a mixture of sorrow and gratitude. Now the Buddha's gaze swept from son to father, then back again. Do you see? Stress is not only yours, it flows between you both. A father's worry feeds the son's unrest, and the son's unrest feeds the father's worry. Together, the weight doubles, but together, you can also learn to release it. The father placed his hand firmly on his son's back, not as a correction, but as comfort. For the first time, the boy leaned into it instead of away. The Buddha let silence return, knowing that words are sometimes less important than the stillness that surrounds them. The forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Then, with a gentle certainty, he said, "To free yourselves, you must see not only the burden, but also the roots from which it grows. There are 8 roots. Each one must be known before it can be released." The boy's head lifted fully now. His father's eyes met the Buddha's with a readiness born of desperation and love. And so the master prepared to name them, one by one. Before we go deeper, take a moment yourself. If you've ever felt this invisible pack on your shoulders, you are not alone. I'd love for you to pause and write in the comments, which part of this story so far speaks to you most? Your words may remind someone else that they are not carrying their weight in silence. And now, with the quiet of the forest as witness, the Buddha began to reveal the first root, the one that so often goes unnoticed, yet drives people to exhaustion. The restless chase of ambition without end, seeking answers. The father adjusted his seat on the grass, his knees stiff from the long days of travel. He looked at his son, then back to the Buddha, and his voice carried both urgency and humility. "Teacher, forgive me if I ask too much, but I cannot rest until I understand. The physicians told me my son is burdened by stress, yet they only offered medicine and advice to think less. I do not know what that word truly means. I do not know where it comes from or how it can be lifted. I beg you, explain it to me in a way I can understand. I must know, so that I can help him." The Buddha sat quietly, his gaze steady, his breath unhurried. He let the plea hang in the air, like a stone dropped into a still pond, ripples widening with each moment. Then, with the calm certainty of someone who has seen both storms and clear skies, he began to answer. "You see, most people imagine stress to be something outside of themselves. Work, money, family demands. But the true weight does not come from the world. It comes from the gap between the body and the mind. When the body is here and now, but the mind is chasing something else, running to the future, clinging to the past, stress is born. That gap grows wider and wider until a person feels torn in two. It is not the task that breaks them. It is the distance. The father listened as though every word was a rope lowering into a deep well where he had been trapped. His son shifted beside him, the truth pressing into his chest with a strange mixture of pain and relief. The Buddha's voice carried onward, steady as water flowing. When you play a game you love or lose yourself in music, notice how alive you feel afterward. Your body may be tired, but your spirit is bright. Why? Because body and mind are together, focused in the same moment. But when you force yourself through something you resent, your hands perform the task, yet your mind escapes, wandering into stories and complaints. That separation is the seed of stress. It grows quietly, and before long, it consumes your strength. The father pressed his palms together in respect. His voice shook as he asked, "Then what can we do? How do we prevent this gap from tearing us apart?" The Buddha leaned forward, his tone turning more intimate, as though he spoke directly into the heart of both father and son. "You must give yourself fully to one thing at a time. Eat and only eat. Walk and only walk. Work and only work. When body and mind rest in the same place, stress cannot survive. But if you scatter your attention, if you do one thing while thinking of another, the distance returns and stress grows strong again." The boy looked down at his hands. His fingers flexed as if testing whether he could grasp the lesson as firmly as he might grasp a tool. He whispered, almost to himself, "Then I must learn to be where I am." The Buddha gave a small nod, and for the first time, the faintest smile touched his lips. The father exhaled, his chest loosening with the realization that his son was beginning to listen. Yet, even as relief washed through him, another wave of worry rose. He asked softly, "But teacher, is this enough? My son struggles daily. Is simply being present the only answer?" The Buddha's eyes grew deep and distant, as though they looked not at one boy, but at all of humanity. His voice deepened. "Being present is the door. But before you walk through it, you must see the walls that surround you. Stress has roots, strong and tangled, that keep you bound. To free yourself, you must recognize each one, cut it at its source, and only then can the door remain open. There are 8 such roots. They are the hidden causes of human suffering, and they rise again and again unless you learn to see them." The father and son exchanged glances, their faces mirroring both fear and hope. To be told that stress had many roots meant the problem was greater than they imagined, but also that there was a clear map to follow, 8 markers on the path out of the forest. The Buddha continued, "The first root is ambition without end. Ambition is not evil in itself, but when a person chases one goal after another, never pausing to rest in the present moment, they lose themselves. As soon as one goal is reached, another rises. The chase never ends. Their body is here, but their mind is always running forward, imagining what comes next. That is why ambition, when left unchecked, creates suffering." The boy furrowed his brow, a question forming. "But teacher, does this mean we should never set goals? Should we not dream or strive?" The Buddha met his eyes with warmth. "To have a goal is not the problem. To cling to the result is. Live fully in your effort. Do your work with care, without becoming lost in what tomorrow might bring. Strive, but do not abandon the present moment in the process. Otherwise, your life becomes nothing but running, and you never arrive." The father felt a weight shift inside him. He thought of all the years he had pushed his son to study, to succeed, to live up to expectations. Perhaps his own ambitions had planted some of this burden. He lowered his eyes, humbled. The Buddha noticed the man's silence but did not comment. Instead, he let the lesson breathe. The grove fell still again, the pause as important as the words themselves. Before the quiet grew too heavy, the Buddha spoke once more. "Ambition is only the first root. There are 7 more, each one as dangerous, each one hidden. If you wish to live without this weight, you must see them all. Only then can you be free. The boy straightened his back. His father leaned closer, determined not to miss a word. And here is where the journey deepens, for the next route is one we all know too well: the quiet, corrosive fire of envy. It eats away not at the body, but at the soul. Let us step carefully into that truth. The master's gaze. The grove grew quieter still, as though the air itself leaned closer to listen. The Buddha did not hurry. His eyes rested on the young man with a gaze that felt both piercing and gentle, like sunlight filtering through leaves. There was no judgment in that look, only a deep seeing, the kind that notices what words often conceal. The boy felt uneasy under that gaze. He shifted where he sat, fingers curling into the grass again, but he could not look away. It was as though the Buddha saw not only the lines of his face and the slouch of his shoulders, but also the fears and doubts he carried inside. The master's eyes lingered on his, then drifted to his lips, then down to his trembling hands. At last, with the patience of someone measuring the tides, he reached forward and gently held the boy's wrist. The touch was light, no more than a whisper of pressure, but it carried weight. The Buddha closed his eyes, feeling the rhythm of the boy's pulse, the unevenness that spoke of nights without rest, of thoughts running too quickly. He breathed with the boy, not forcing the breath, simply sharing the air. When he opened his eyes again, there was a stillness in his expression that spread outward like ripples on water. "Your body is young," the Buddha said softly, "but your mind has been running as if chased. It is not age that has turned your hair white, but the weight of constant unrest. You are not broken, you are simply divided. Your body remains here, but your mind wanders endlessly, and so you feel twice as old as you are." The father bowed low, his forehead nearly touching the earth. "Teacher, you describe exactly what I have seen but could not name. My son has lost the light of his years, and I feared it would never return." The Buddha lifted his hand gently, signaling the man to raise his head. "Fear only adds more distance. What he needs is not fear, but understanding." He looked back to the boy. "Tell me, do you notice how your thoughts scatter? When you eat, your mind leaps to tomorrow. When you try to rest, it drags you back to yesterday. Even now, as you sit here, part of you is already somewhere else." The boy swallowed hard and nodded. "It feels as though I cannot stop it. Even when I want to, my thoughts keep running. They do not listen to me." The Buddha's smile was faint, but it softened the heaviness of the moment. "Then it is your mind that leads, and you who follow. But a mind is like a horse. It can be wild, it can be restless. If you never guide it, it will carry you anywhere, even into danger. But if you learn to hold the reins, it will take you where you wish to go. You must learn to guide your thoughts back to the present, again and again, until they grow calm." The father listened with tears filling his eyes. He reached out, placing a hand gently on his son's back, a gesture of both sorrow and hope. The boy did not flinch this time. He let the touch rest there, as though a small bridge had been rebuilt between them. The Buddha withdrew his hand from the boy's wrist and folded it calmly in his lap. Stress thrives where body and mind are strangers. But when you unite them, even for a moment, peace returns. It does not mean your problems vanish. It means you are no longer fighting them in every direction at once. You become whole again. The boy lifted his gaze, holding it steady now. There was no sudden transformation, but there was a shift, like the first stirring of dawn on the horizon. The Buddha leaned back slightly, and his words slowed, each one given room to settle. "I will tell you of the roots that give stress its strength. 8 roots in all. And as I speak them, you must listen not only with your ears, but with your heart. Each one is familiar. Each one is hidden. But once revealed, they lose their power." The father nodded eagerly, but the boy asked first, his voice timid yet clear. Will it be possible for me to change, even though I'm already so tired? The Buddha's eyes shone with calm certainty. It is always possible. A tree bent by the wind can grow straight again if given time and care. You are not beyond healing. You have only forgotten the way. The words sank deep. The boy closed his eyes, and for the first time since arriving, his breath fell into rhythm with the rustle of leaves around them. The forest itself seemed to exhale with him. Now the Buddha's tone shifted, firmer, carrying the gravity of what was to come. The first root we have already touched, ambition without end, but there is another, just as dangerous, though quieter. It burns not in the muscles, but in the heart. It is envy, the wound that never heals. The father and son both straightened slightly, bracing themselves. The father's jaw tightened, as though he had known this feeling himself. The boy's lips pressed together, knowing envy's sting more clearly than he wished to admit. The Buddha allowed silence to fall again, letting the name of this next root echo in their minds. Before we step into that lesson, I'd love for you to pause and reflect. What the Master has said so far about the gap between body and mind. Does it sound familiar in your own life? Leave a comment below and share your experience. Your reflection may be the bridge someone else needs tonight. And now, with the forest quiet around them, the Master prepared to reveal the truth of envy and how it gnaws at the soul if left unseen. What is stress? The boy's eyes stayed fixed on the Buddha, as if waiting for a definition that might finally make sense of the heavy fog he had been walking through. The Master's voice carried gently but firmly, each word chosen like a stone laid on a path. You ask what stress truly is. Let me tell you. Stress is not a demon hiding outside you. It is not the boss at work, or the noise of the world, or the burden of family alone. Those things may stir it, but they are not its source. Stress is the distance between where your body is and where your mind insists on wandering. He paused. The wind moved lightly across the grove, shifting the branches above them. The father leaned closer, eager for more. The boy, for the first time in many days, sat upright, listening fully. When you are here, the Buddha continued, but your thoughts are in tomorrow's fears, stress is born. When your hands perform a task, but your mind is still replaying yesterday's mistakes, stress grows stronger. The body and the mind drift apart, and the greater the distance, the heavier the strain. Stress is that distance made real inside you. The boy lowered his gaze, whispering almost to himself, "That's exactly how it feels, as though I am split in two." The Buddha nodded, not with pity, but with understanding. Yes, and the more you fight against it blindly, the more the gap widens. You cannot push stress away by force. You must bring body and mind back together. The father's brow furrowed. How is that done, teacher? How do we unite what has grown apart? The Buddha answered by offering a picture they could hold. Think of a musician playing a song they love. Their fingers move, their voice carries the tune, and their heart rests fully in the music. In that moment, there is no division. The body plays, the mind follows, and both are whole. Afterward, the musician may be tired, but not weary. They are filled with joy, not drained by effort. That is because stress cannot survive where body and mind meet as one. The boy thought of moments from childhood, running barefoot in fields, laughing with friends. He remembered how light he had once felt, even after hours of play. That memory flickered in him like a lantern in the dark. The Buddha saw the shift and spoke again. But when you work at something that does not stir your spirit, your hands may move, but your mind flees elsewhere, into daydreams, into complaints, into worries. The body stays, but the mind departs. This is the crack where stress slips in. The father pressed his palms together. Then, to heal, we must learn to be present in what we do. The Buddha inclined his head. Yes, when you eat, only eat, taste the food. When you walk, only walk. Feel the ground beneath your feet. When you breathe, only breathe. Let the body and the mind be companions, not strangers. That is how the distance closes. The boy lifted his eyes once more, searching the master's face. But it feels impossible. My thoughts pull me away before I even notice. I try to hold them still, and they slip through my fingers. The Buddha's reply was slow, steady, like the rhythm of a drum. Then bring them back, again and again. Each time you notice your mind has wandered, guide it gently home. Do not scold yourself. Do not despair. A child learning to walk stumbles 100 times before they stand firm. Your mind is no different. It will learn by your patience. The forest around them held a stillness so deep it seemed to echo his words. The father's shoulders softened. The boy's breath fell into rhythm once again with the breeze, as though, for a moment, his body and mind sat in the same place. Understand this clearly, the Buddha said. Stress is not an enemy to destroy. It is a signal. It tells you that body and mind have parted. Treat it as a bell calling you back to the present. Each time you hear it, return. The boy's face relaxed, the tightness in his jaw loosening. His father noticed and closed his eyes, silently thanking the quiet wisdom settling over them. The Buddha let the silence linger once more before continuing. But to remain free, you must not only close the gap, you must also see what pulls your mind away in the first place. Stress does not grow from nowhere. It has roots 8 in total. You have already heard of ambition without end. Now listen to the second, for it burns quietly in many hearts and poisons them from within. This root is envy. The words seemed to echo through the grove. The boy swallowed hard. The father shifted, as though the name of envy had touched something raw in his own memory. Before we step into that truth, I'd love for you to pause and think. Does this picture of stress as a distance between body and mind make sense to you? If it does, write in the comments and share your experience. Your reflection may remind someone else that they are not alone in what they carry. And now, with the forest waiting, the master prepared to speak of envy, the second root of stress, and the way it slowly consumes the soul. A game versus a burden. The Buddha's eyes softened as he turned to the boy, sensing the doubt that still lingered in his chest. He spoke with the calm rhythm of waves meeting the shore. Consider this, young one. Imagine a man who plays his favorite game. His body works hard running, stretching, sweating, but afterward, he feels light, joyful, even more alive. Now imagine that same man forced to do work he hates. His body may move in the same way, yet afterward he feels exhausted, drained, heavy with frustration. The difference is not in the body. The difference is in the union or the division of body and mind. The boy tilted his head, listening intently. His father, too, leaned in as though the story were a mirror of his own life. When you love what you are doing, the Buddha continued, your body and your mind walk together. The muscles may tire, but the spirit is refreshed. When you resent what you are doing, your body stays with the task, but your mind flees to escape it. That separation is what we call stress. It is not the task itself. It is the burden of being divided. The boy thought back to his childhood, recalling afternoons of running freely with his friends in the fields, games of tag that left him breathless but laughing. He remembered the thrill of climbing trees, of racing barefoot on grass warmed by the sun. Afterward, though his body was weary, his heart had been light. Now, as he studied the ground beneath him, he realized how far he had drifted from that simple union of effort and joy. The Buddha's voice grew firmer, though never harsh. This is why some people collapse under even small tasks, while others thrive under great ones. It is not the size of the task. It is whether they meet it whole, with body and mind together, or broken, with body and mind apart. The father bowed his head slightly, recognizing himself in the lesson. He had often forced his son into studies, chores, duties, with little thought for whether the boy's heart could follow. Perhaps, in his desire for success, he had only widened the distance inside his child. The Buddha let the silence breathe. Then he asked the boy, "Do you remember the last time you lost yourself in something you loved?" The boy hesitated, then whispered, "When I was younger, playing with my friends. But now, even when I try to enjoy something, my thoughts rush ahead. I feel the weight before I even begin." The master's gaze remained steady. "That is because your mind has learned to flee before the body moves. It expects division. But you can teach it again. Start small. Choose one simple act: walking, eating, even washing your hands. Let your mind stay with your body through the whole act. Do it fully, and you will taste freedom again." The boy nodded slowly, though his eyes revealed both hope and fear-hope that change was possible, fear that he might fail. The Buddha noticed and said, "Even if you fail 100 times, do not despair. Each return is practice. Each return closes the gap." The father placed a hand on his son's shoulder, more gently than before. For once, the boy did not shrink away. The Buddha leaned back slightly, his words once more measured. "Understand this clearly. Joy does not come from avoiding effort. Joy comes when effort is whole. A game is joyful because the player gives himself completely to it. A burden is heavy because the worker gives himself only in part. To live free from stress, you must learn to meet life as you meet a game, with body and mind united." The forest seemed to sigh with him, the branches shifting gently above. The boy breathed in deeply, as though for the first time he tasted what it meant to be whole. The Buddha let the moment settle before he continued. "But even as you learn this, there are other roots that feed stress, roots hidden deep in the soil of the heart. You have heard of ambition without end. You now see the division between joy and burden. Next, you must understand envy. The quiet fire that burns within, turning joy into ash." The boy's eyes flickered with recognition. The father shifted uncomfortably, as though envy had touched him too. "Before we go further, take a pause yourself. Think of a time when you felt alive in something you loved, even though it was hard. Can you remember how your body was tired, but your spirit was free? Share that memory in the comments. You might remind someone else that joy is not found in escape, but in presence." And now, with the forest listening, the master prepared to speak of envy, the second root of stress, and how it quietly corrodes the heart. 8 causes begin. The Buddha's voice deepened, and the air in the grove seemed to lean toward him. His disciples, who remained at a distance, grew still, sensing that something important was about to unfold. The father straightened his posture, and the boy, though weary, fixed his eyes on the master as if clinging to a rope lowered into dark waters. "Stress," the Buddha said slowly, "is not born in one place alone. It rises from many roots, each hidden in the soil of the mind. If you do not see them, they grow unchecked, twining together until they strangle your peace. But if you learn to name them, you begin to loosen their grip." He raised one hand slightly, as if counting on invisible beads. "There are 8 causes, 8 roots that make the heart restless and the body weak. The first is ambition without end. The second is envy. The third is labor without joy. The fourth is expectation of others. The fifth is pain of the body. The sixth is rushing without clarity. The seventh is delay, postponing what must be done. And the eighth is the storm of endless thinking. Each one feeds the distance between body and mind. Each one must be understood." The father bowed his head, letting the words fall over him like rain. The boy, curious now, whispered, "You said ambition without end is the first. Why is that so dangerous?" The Buddha's gaze rested gently on him. "Because ambition is endless by nature. A man sets a goal, reaches it, and immediately sets another. He reaches that one, and another rises. His body remains in the present, but his mind is always running forward. He is never home. He lives not in the life he has, but in the life he imagines will come tomorrow. That is the trap of ambition. It keeps you running in circles, never allowing you to rest where you are. The boy frowned. But should we not strive? Should we not have dreams? The Buddha inclined his head. To dream is not wrong. To set goals is not wrong. The danger lies in tying your peace to what has not yet arrived. Work for your dream, but live in the present moment. If your joy depends only on the future, you will never find it because the future never arrives. When it comes, it is already the present and still you will be running. The father pressed his lips together, ashamed. He thought of all the times he had urged his son to achieve more, to push harder, to never be satisfied. Perhaps, without realizing, he had planted this restlessness. His eyes fell to the ground, and his breath grew heavy. The Buddha noticed his silence, but did not chastise him. He continued gently. Ambition is like a fire. It can warm your house, or it can burn it down. Controlled, it gives life. Unchecked, it consumes. You must learn when enough is enough. The boy sat with the words, unsure how to hold them, yet feeling them echo in his chest. His father finally lifted his gaze and asked, Then how do we strive without being consumed? The Buddha answered, By shifting your focus from the result to the effort. Work with all your strength, but let go of what you cannot control. The fruit of the tree will ripen in its season, whether you worry or not. Do your work with presence and leave the rest. The forest seemed to hum in quiet agreement. The father breathed more easily. The boy's eyes softened. For the first time, the crushing word stress felt less like a curse and more like a puzzle that could be solved. But the Buddha was not finished. His voice grew firmer. Ambition without end is only the first root. It is easy to see because it runs loudly in the mind. But there are subtler roots, quieter poisons that work in secret. One of them is envy. When you see the joy or success of another and feel bitterness instead of gladness, your heart begins to rot from within. That is the second root. The father shifted uncomfortably, as though those words had pierced him. The boy's lips pressed together, knowing the sting of envy himself. The Buddha allowed silence to stretch. He wanted the weight of the truth to settle before pulling them deeper. And here, let me invite you, listening now. Think for a moment about ambition in your own life. Has chasing the next step ever stolen the joy of the present moment from you? If it has, you are not alone. Share your reflection in the comments. It may be the very reminder someone else needs tonight. Now the grove braced itself as the Buddha prepared to speak of envy, the fire that does not burn the skin but scorches the soul. Ambition's trap. The Buddha let his words hang in the stillness, and the forest seemed to grow even quieter. The father and son sat waiting, both sensing that what came next would touch something raw inside them. The master's tone lowered, steady as a drum beat. Ambition is like a wheel that never stops turning. You take one step forward, reach a goal, and before you can even rest, another goal appears. You climb one hill only to find another behind it. Life becomes a race without a finish line. You may run faster, you may run harder, but you never arrive. The boy lowered his eyes, ashamed. He thought of his studies, the constant pressure to do better, to be better, never allowed to pause. His father's hand trembled slightly as he realized he had been the one urging his son into this endless chase. The Buddha's gaze softened, but his words did not lose their weight. Ambition in itself is not evil. It is like fire. It can cook your food, or it can burn your home to the ground. The danger lies not in having a goal, but in believing your worth depends on reaching it. When you tie your peace to tomorrow's result, you throw away the only moment you truly have, this one. The father's breath caught in his chest. His voice was low when he asked, "But if we abandon goals, do we not abandon progress?" The Buddha shook his head gently. "You need not abandon goals. You must abandon the illusion that your life begins only after those goals are reached. Work with presence, strive with care. But remember, the fruit of the tree ripens when its season comes, whether you worry over it or not. Worry does not sweeten the fruit, it only sours the heart." The boy looked up slowly, his eyes uncertain. "But I am young. If I do not push myself, how will I succeed? How will I make my father proud?" The Buddha turned his gaze fully upon him. Pride is not the same as love, and success is not the same as peace. You may chase after achievements and fill your hands with them, but if your mind is never here, you will still feel empty. What you call success will never satisfy. It will only whisper that you must run faster. The boy's throat tightened. He thought of nights staring at books he could no longer see clearly, his father urging him to try harder, his mind already racing toward exams and futures he could not control. He realized then that his exhaustion was not from the work alone. It was from never being allowed to arrive in the present. The Buddha spoke again, slow and deliberate. "Tell me, if a man runs in circles around a tree all day, has he gone far? He may be out of breath, but he has not arrived anywhere. This is the trap of ambition. It promises arrival, but delivers only exhaustion." The father lowered his head, his heart heavy with guilt. The boy felt his father's shame and reached out, touching his sleeve lightly. For the first time, the father looked into his son's eyes not with expectation, but with sorrow and tenderness. The Buddha let the silence rest between them, then said, "To free yourself from this trap, you must learn to place value in effort, not outcome. Let your peace be in how you live this moment, not in what tomorrow may bring. Work with your whole being now and let the results unfold in their own time. This is the way to live without chains." The boy's face softened, as if a knot within him had loosened. His father nodded slowly, though his heart still wrestled with years of teaching the opposite. The Buddha's eyes turned to the horizon, where the last light of day was fading. "But ambition is only one of the roots. Others run deeper still. Some are quieter, but even more dangerous. You must see them clearly if you wish to be free. The second root, envy, is like a hidden flame. It smolders inside, unseen by others, but it eats away at the one who carries it." The boy swallowed. The father shifted uncomfortably. Both knew envy's shadow, though neither wished to name it. The Buddha allowed the truth to settle before adding, "Envy is not only the desire for what another has. It is the pain at another's joy. It is a wound of the spirit, one that does not bleed outward, but inward, and it can never heal so long as you keep feeding it." The grove was silent, each listener pulled inward by the weight of those words. Before we move deeper, pause here yourself. Ask honestly, has ambition ever led you into running circles, chasing results but losing the present moment? If so, you are not alone. Share your reflection in the comments. You may help someone else who is caught in the same trap tonight. The Buddha looked back to the father and son, and his voice lowered once more. "Now let us turn to envy, the second root of stress, and see how it poisons the heart if it is not understood." Clarifying goals. The Buddha let his words fall gently into the evening air, the silence that followed carrying as much weight as the teaching itself. The father shifted uncomfortably, still wrestling with the realization that his constant pushing had tied his son's worth to endless goals. The boy sat stiff, as though afraid to move, afraid that even the slightest motion might break the fragile clarity he was beginning to glimpse. Then the Buddha spoke again, his tone calm, almost like a whisper carried by the wind. "To have a goal is not wrong. To dream is not wrong. What harms you is not the act of striving, but the way you clutch at the result. as if your very life depends on it. You must learn to separate effort from outcome. The father frowned slightly. But how can a man separate them? If we work, is it not natural to desire the fruit of our labor? The Buddha smiled faintly, his eyes reflecting the fading light. Yes, the desire for harvest is natural. But think of the farmer. He tills the soil, he plants the seed, he waters and tends the field. He does everything he can with his whole heart. But he does not command the rain, nor can he dictate the sun. If he ties his peace to whether the rain falls today or tomorrow, his life will be nothing but anxiety. But if he finds his peace in the act of tending the soil, then even as he waits, his heart is steady. The boy's eyes widened, as though the parable had struck him with sudden force. He whispered, "Then it is the waiting that wounds me, always waiting for something to happen before I can feel whole." The Buddha nodded. "Yes, your waiting has robbed you of living. You live as though your true life will begin tomorrow, when in fact it can only ever begin here, in this breath, in this step. When you live as though peace lies only at the end of ambition, you will never know it. For when you arrive at one place, the mind has already run to the next. The trap of ambition is not striving itself, it is forgetting that the present is the only ground you will ever stand on." The father pressed his hands together, bowing slightly. "Teacher, I see now that I have chained my son to results. I thought I was guiding him to strength, but I see I was binding him to endless striving. Forgive me." The Buddha's voice was steady but kind. "There is no need for forgiveness when there is awakening. You did what you thought was right. Now you see more clearly. That is enough." The boy turned to his father, his lips trembling. "I never wished to disappoint you, but I felt like no matter how far I went, it was never enough. I thought something was broken in me." Tears welled in the father's eyes as he shook his head. "Nothing was broken in you, my son. It was my vision that was clouded." His hand rested gently on the boy's back, and for the first time in many years, the son leaned into it. The Buddha let the moment breathe. Then his voice carried once more. "Remember this. Set goals, yes. Work hard, yes. But hold them lightly. Give your full presence to the work itself, not the promise of what may come. If joy is only in the fruit, you will starve in the season of planting. But if joy is in the planting, you will eat even before the harvest arrives." The boy inhaled deeply, as though tasting the truth of those words. The father exhaled, his shoulders loosening, his face softening into something gentler than the stern mask he usually wore. The Buddha leaned forward slightly, his eyes sharp but compassionate. "You must ask yourself, are your goals guiding you, or are they chasing you? Do you hold them, or do they hold you? That is the difference between freedom and bondage." The boy nodded slowly, but repeating to himself, "Do I hold them, or do they hold me?" His voice was unsteady, but it carried a seed of strength. The forest had grown darker now, shadows stretching long, the chorus of insects beginning their song. The teaching seemed to settle into the rhythm of the night itself. Before we move on, pause here for a moment. Think of a goal in your own life. Ask yourself honestly, are you living in the planting or only in the harvest? If your peace depends on tomorrow, perhaps you are carrying the same burden as this boy. Share your thoughts in the comments. It may be the mirror another person needs tonight. The Buddha's eyes turned once more to the father and son. His tone grew quieter, but no less powerful. Now, let us look at the second root of stress. Envy. Unlike ambition, envy does not run loudly ahead. It burns quietly inside, eating away not at the body, but at the heart itself. To see it clearly is to understand how it steals joy from even the brightest days. The poison of envy. The grove held a hushed stillness, the kind of silence that makes every sound sharper. The Buddha's gaze moved slowly between the father and son, then out toward the gathering shadows. His words came softly, but each one carried weight. The second root of stress is envy. It does not shout like ambition. It whispers, quiet and constant, gnawing at the soul from within. The boy furrowed his brow, uneasy. The father shifted where he sat, his eyes tightening as though he already knew what the master meant. Envy, the Buddha continued, is the sorrow you feel at another's joy. It is the sickness of seeing someone else's gain as your own loss. You may not speak it aloud, but inside, your heart twists. Their laughter feels like your failure. Their success feels like your shame. This is the poison of envy. The boy looked down, ashamed. He thought of friends who seemed brighter, stronger, more confident. He remembered the sting in his chest when one of them succeeded, when their faces glowed with praise. It was not that he wished them harm, but their happiness made him feel smaller, weaker, left behind. The Buddha's eyes rested on him knowingly. Envy does not wound the one you envy. It wounds only you. It is like holding a burning coal in your hand, waiting to throw it, but never releasing it. You suffer the burn while the other goes unharmed. The father closed his eyes briefly, his own memories stirring. He recalled neighbors who prospered, colleagues who advanced, families whose children seemed stronger or more gifted. Each time he had smiled on the outside, but inside he had felt the bite of envy, the quiet resentment. And perhaps, without meaning to, he had passed that poison on to his son. The Buddha's voice was steady, but not condemning. A wound on the body may heal with time, but a wound in the heart, left untreated, festers. Envy is such a wound. It festers in silence until the soul grows sick with bitterness, and bitterness feeds stress until the mind cannot rest. The boy's voice was barely a whisper. Then, how can I stop it? I don't want to feel this way, but it rises without asking me. The Buddha leaned forward slightly, his expression calm but intent. You must replace envy with compassion. When you see another's joy, let it remind you that joy exists. When you see another's success, let it inspire you instead of breaking you. Celebrate what they have, for it shows you what is possible. Their light does not dim yours. The sky holds countless stars, and each shines in its own way. The boy lifted his head slowly, the words planting themselves inside him. His father's throat tightened as he listened, recognizing how many times he had failed to celebrate others, how often he had allowed bitterness to cloud his heart. The Buddha's gaze softened. Remember this. Envy is a thief. It steals gratitude from your heart. Gratitude and envy cannot live together. When you give thanks for what you have, envy has no place to grow. Each day look for one thing, however small, to be grateful for, a breath, a meal, a moment of rest. Gratitude is the antidote. The father and son both bowed slightly, their hearts humbled. The boy whispered again, I will try. I want to learn gratitude instead. The forest seemed to breathe with them, a breeze moving gently through the leaves. The weight of the teaching lingered in the air, as though the earth itself had absorbed it. The Buddha let the silence stretch, then said, Now you see the second root, but there are more. If envy wounds the heart, the next root drains the spirit. It comes when a person spends their life in work they do not love, laboring without joy, turning every task into a burden. That is the third root of stress. Before we step into that, take a moment yourself. Think back on your own life. Have you ever felt envy twist your heart when you saw another's happiness? Did it rob you of your own peace? If so, you are not alone. Share that reflection in the comments. You may remind someone else that they too can turn envy into gratitude. The Buddha looked once more at the boy, then at the father, and his voice lowered into a whisper. Let us look next at the work of life. and why joyless labor crushes the soul. An inner wound. The night deepened around the grove, and the sounds of insects filled the spaces between words. The Buddha's eyes remained steady, calm as still water, but his tone carried the sharpness of truth. Envy is not like a cut on the skin. It is an inner wound. And unlike the body, the heart does not heal simply with time. If left unattended, the wound grows, festering silently until every thought, every action is stained by its poison. The boy shifted uneasily. He had felt that wound before, when he compared himself to friends who seemed stronger, smarter, more admired. He had smiled on the outside, but inside there had been a sting, a tightening in his chest that made him restless. He realized now that those moments had not passed on their own. They had remained within him, growing roots. The Buddha's gaze turned toward him gently. You may hide envy from others, but you cannot hide it from yourself. The body forgets a scar, but the heart remembers its pain until you release it. And if you cling to it, it feeds stress day after day, leaving you weary without knowing why. The father lowered his head, guilt pressing heavy on his shoulders. He thought of all the times he had compared his son to the children of others, hoping it would motivate him. In truth, it had only planted seeds of envy and shame. He saw now that he had sharpened the very blade that wounded his boy. The Buddha's words carried no anger, only clarity. To heal an inner wound, you must first look directly at it. Do not turn away. Do not deny it. See your envy for what it is. A cry from the heart, a mistaken belief that another's light makes yours dimmer. Then, breathe and let compassion rise in its place. Each time envy stirs, practice saying, "May they be well, may I be well." In that wish, the wound begins to close. The boy listened, and something inside him softened. He thought of a classmate who had outshone him, the resentment he had carried, the way it had twisted his joy. He imagined, for the first time, wishing that classmate well, not through gritted teeth, but with sincerity. The idea felt strange, but also freeing, like setting down a stone he had carried for too long. The Buddha leaned slightly closer. You may wonder, how does compassion change what you feel? Compassion teaches the heart that joy is not scarce. Another's success does not steal your chance. Another's laughter does not silence your own. When you truly see this, envy loses its fuel and the wound begins to heal. The father let out a deep breath he had not realized he was holding. His eyes glistened. He knew envy's burn well, in himself and in others, and for the first time he believed it could be cooled. The Buddha's voice dropped to a near whisper. Remember this. A man's body may be strong, but if his heart is full of wounds, he cannot stand upright for long. Heal the inner wounds with compassion and gratitude, and the body will feel lighter, the mind clearer. Stress cannot survive where the heart is whole. The boy's shoulders relaxed, his breath slower now. He did not feel cured, but he felt the faint beginning of peace, as though a heavy door had opened just enough to let in a breeze. The grove itself seemed to exhale with him, the branches shifting softly overhead. The father reached across and placed his hand more firmly on his son's back. For the first time, the boy leaned fully into the touch, no longer resisting, no longer ashamed. The Buddha allowed the silence to stretch before he spoke again. Now you understand envy as an inner wound. But there are other roots of stress, each one hidden in different soil. The next lies not in what you feel about others, but in the work you give to yourself. When you labor without joy, when you spend your life in tasks that do not match your heart, your body and mind divide once more. That is the third root of stress. Before we step further, pause for a moment yourself. Ask honestly, have you ever carried envy quietly, letting it eat away at your peace while no one else noticed? If so, you are not alone. Share your reflection in the comments. You may give someone else the courage to face their own inner wound. The Buddha's eyes grew distant and his voice slowed, as though preparing them for what lay ahead. Now, let us look to the work of life and see why labor without joy leaves the spirit empty. Work without joy. The Buddha let the quiet linger, then his words flowed again, steady and calm. The third root of stress comes when you give your life to work that carries no joy. A person may labor with their hands all day, but if their heart does not join in the work, the body grows weary while the mind drifts far away. The body stays in the field, but the mind escapes into dreams, complaints, and fears. That division opens the door for stress to enter. The boy shifted where he sat. His own days had been filled with tasks he did not love, duties that felt heavy, studies that drained him. He had often sat at his desk while his thoughts ran off into fantasies, memories, and worries. Now, he understood why his body felt so heavy and his spirit so thin. The father looked down, regret etched into his features. He had thought discipline alone would shape his son, pushing him toward duties whether or not he loved them. He saw now how that very pressure had widened the gap between his son's body and mind. The Buddha continued, his voice carrying the weight of truth. When you do work that matches your heart, it does not feel like labor. The body may grow tired, yes, but the mind is alive, present, whole. Joy flows through the effort, and even exhaustion feels like completion. But when you force yourself into tasks that bring no meaning, your body moves like a prisoner, while your mind pounds on the bars, seeking escape. That prison is stress. The boy whispered, almost to himself, "Then all this time I was not weak. I was only divided." The Buddha inclined his head. Yes, weakness is not the cause. Division is. When body and mind pull in opposite directions, even the smallest task feels unbearable. But when they move together, even great effort becomes light. The father raised his head, his voice low and uncertain. "But teacher, life is full of tasks we do not love. Not every duty can be joyful. Are we then doomed to suffer stress in all those moments?" The Buddha's eyes were calm, but his words firm. It is true that not every task begins with joy, but every task can be entered with presence. Joy does not come from the task itself, but from the way you meet it. If you bring your full attention, if you treat even small tasks as worthy of care, you close the gap between body and mind. Then, even washing a bowl or sweeping the floor becomes a practice of peace. The boy thought of how he had often eaten without tasting, worked without focus, walked without noticing. He realized he had been absent from his own life. The Buddha leaned forward slightly, his gaze steady. If you cannot choose work you love, then learn to love the work you choose by being fully there. Presence transforms labor into practice. Without presence, even a joyful task can turn to burden. With presence, even a burden can become light. The father pressed his palms together, bowing. His voice carried both sorrow and hope. "I see now. I pressed my son into duties without teaching him presence. I gave him tasks, but not joy." The Buddha answered, "And now you see clearly. That is enough to begin again." The forest rustled softly above, as though nature itself agreed. The boy inhaled deeply, a breath that felt fuller than those before. For the first time, he felt that perhaps the life he carried could be lighter, not because his tasks would vanish, but because he could meet them differently. The Buddha allowed the moment to settle, then added, "Work without joy is the third root, but there are others still. The next comes not from within your own duties, but from what you expect of others. The weight of your expectations becomes their burden, and when they fail to meet it, stress multiplies between you. That is the fourth root." Before we move on, pause here with me. Think of your own life. Have you ever felt drained, not because of the size of the task, but because your heart was not in it? Did absence make the work heavier than it needed to be? If that feels familiar, share your reflection in the comments. You might help someone else recognize that they are not weak, only divided. The Buddha's gaze moved once more between father and son, then back to the silent grove. Now, let us turn to expectations and see how they tangle the heart and create stress where love should be. Play as work. The Buddha's voice lingered in the stillness, carrying the weight of truth, yet wrapped in gentleness. He looked toward the boy, then to the father, and back again. When you find what you love, the work of life transforms. It ceases to feel like endless labor. It begins to feel like play, and play, though it requires effort, never feels like a chain. It is freedom in motion. The boy tilted his head, uncertain. The word play stirred memories of his childhood, running barefoot through tall grass, laughing until his lungs burned, climbing trees until his arms trembled. He had ended those days covered in dirt and sweat, yet light as though he had been lifted by the very sky. He whispered, "Yes, when I played, I was tired, but I was never weary." The Buddha gave a slow nod. "That is because your body and mind were together. You did not climb a tree with your body while your mind worried about tomorrow's storm. You did not run with your friends while thinking of yesterday's scolding. You were whole. That wholeness is the secret. When you live like this, even work becomes play. And when you live without it, even play becomes heavy." The father's chest rose and fell with a deep sigh. He remembered days when he too had played freely, before the responsibilities of adulthood hardened into stone. He realized he had buried that memory under layers of duty, expecting his son to do the same. The Buddha's eyes softened. The path is not to escape all duties. It is to bring the spirit of play into them. When you approach your work with curiosity, with care, with presence, you turn it into practice. The body may grow tired, but the heart will remain light. This is how you transform stress into peace. The boy looked doubtful. "But teacher, how can I treat my tasks as play when they feel so heavy, when I am forced into them?" The Buddha's voice carried patience, like a teacher guiding a child's first steps. You begin by being fully there. Presence itself turns weight into movement. Imagine carrying water. If your mind complains, "Why must I do this? When will it end?" the bucket grows heavier with every step. But if you notice the coolness of the water, the strength in your arms, the rhythm of your breath, the work becomes lighter. The bucket does not change. You do. The father bowed his head, ashamed of how often he had demanded the task, but never taught his son the presence that could make it lighter. The boy, though, seemed to catch a glimpse of possibility. He thought of the next time he would walk to fetch water or sit at his studies. Could he meet those moments not with resistance, but with presence? The idea felt strange, but also like a doorway cracking open. The Buddha allowed the silence to breathe, then spoke again. Play is not the absence of work. It is the transformation of work into joy through presence. A child playing and a master at his craft are not so different. Both are fully absorbed, body and mind united. That unity is what frees you from stress. The boy inhaled slowly, holding the thought. His father exhaled, a tremor of regret in his breath, but also the faintest trace of relief. The forest stirred around them, the song of crickets, the rustle of leaves. The Buddha's voice merged with the night as he added, "So remember this. Do not chase only the tasks you love. Bring love into the tasks you chase. When you do, you will discover that joy is not far away. It has been waiting in every action all along." The boy's shoulders relaxed slightly. He looked at his father, and for once there was no resentment in his eyes, only a cautious hope. The father met his gaze, and though words failed him, his hand rested gently on the boy's knee. The connection was quiet, but real. The Buddha let the moment rest, then prepared to guide them deeper. You now see how work without joy becomes a prison, and how presence can transform it into play. But stress is not only born from the tasks we do ourselves. It also grows from the expectations we place upon others. That is the fourth root, and it entangles relationships in suffering. Before we move into that, pause here with me. Think of your own days. Have you ever noticed how presence can transform even a small task? Did you find joy not because the work changed, but because you changed in how you met it? Share that in the comments. You may remind someone else that they too can find play in their work. The Buddha's gaze moved once more to the Father, his voice low, steady. Now, let us turn to expectation and see how it shapes both love and pain. Weight of expectations. The grove had grown darker, but the Buddha's presence seemed to light the space between them. His words came slowly, measured, and each one seemed to carry an echo. The fourth root of stress, he said, is expectation. When you place heavy expectations on others, you not only burden them, you also bind yourself. And when those expectations are not met, suffering multiplies. The Father's breath caught in his throat. His eyes lowered, for he knew at once this truth was meant for him. The Buddha continued. Think of a father who expects his son to walk a certain path, to achieve certain honors, to live in a way that reflects his own dreams. Each time the son falters, the father feels pain, not because the boy has failed in life, but because the boy has not matched his picture of life. And in that gap, stress is born. The father's hands trembled as he folded them in his lap. He whispered, I have done this. I have dreamed for him, and when he did not meet those dreams, I grew harsh. I thought it was love, but perhaps it was my own pride disguised as care. The boy's chest rose and fell heavily. He remembered the endless pressure, the subtle disappointments, the sense that no matter what he did, it was never enough. His voice came quietly. I only wanted you to see me as I was, not only as who you wanted me to be. The father's head dropped lower, his shoulders slumping under the weight of his own regret. The Buddha's gaze was gentle, though his words remained sharp. Expectation is a thief. It robs relationships of peace. It takes the present moment, where love could live, and replaces it with a fantasy of what should be. When reality does not match the fantasy, anger and sorrow rise. And both father and son suffer. He let the words rest in the night air before adding, This does not mean you must never hope, but you must hold hope lightly. To love another is to wish them well as they are, not as you imagine they should be. When you burden them with expectation, you chain them, and those chains bind you too. The father lifted his eyes, wet with tears. Then how do I love without expectation? How do I guide without chaining him? The Buddha answered softly. By replacing expectation with intention, guide with kindness, not demand. Offer wisdom, not command. Wish for their growth, but do not tie your peace to their choices. To love truly is to walk beside them, not to drag them. The boy's eyes shimmered in the dim light. For the first time, he felt his father's sorrow as real, not as another demand. His heart softened. The father turned to him, his voice unsteady. I see now how much I weighed you down. I thought I was lifting you, but I was pressing you into the earth. Forgive me. The boy shook his head slightly. There is nothing to forgive. I only ask that you see me as I am. The moment hung between them, fragile but healing. The Buddha let it breathe. Then he spoke again, his tone returning to the steady rhythm of teaching. Expectation is the fourth root of stress. It wounds both giver and receiver. Release it, and love grows lighter, freer, more enduring. The forest stirred, the sound of crickets weaving through the silence. The Buddha's gaze turned back to the father and son. But expectation is not the only weight. There are roots that press even more heavily, some born not in the mind, but in the body itself. Pain, sickness, and weakness can cloud the spirit just as surely as envy or ambition. This is the fifth root of stress. Before we step further, pause with me. Think of your own life. Have you ever felt crushed under the weight of someone else's expectations? Or perhaps, without meaning to, you placed those expectations on someone you love? Share your reflection in the comments. You might remind another listener that they are not alone in carrying this hidden weight. The Buddha's voice lowered, almost to a whisper. Now let us turn to the pain of the body and see how it can shape the mind if left unguarded. Broken bonds. The Buddha's words seemed to sink into the night itself, heavy and undeniable. The father sat motionless, his shoulders curved inward, as though the weight of his own expectations had finally been revealed to him in full. The boy, sitting beside him, felt both a sharp ache and a strange relief. The ache came from hearing aloud what he had always carried in silence. The relief came from knowing at last that it was not weakness, but burden that had made him falter. The Buddha let the silence breathe before continuing. When expectations harden into chains, they do more than weigh down the other. They break bonds. Love, which should be light, becomes heavy. Care, which should comfort, becomes control. The more you push another to fit your image, the more distance grows between you. And in that distance, trust begins to crumble. The father lowered his face into his hands. His voice cracked. I wanted my son to succeed. To be strong, to honor our family. I thought I was shaping him, but I see now I was only carving away at him. Each demand, each disappointment, I was cutting the thread that bound us together. The boy looked at him, and for the first time, he did not feel anger. He felt the truth of those words land like stones dropping into water. He whispered, I wanted to walk beside you, not always behind you. I wanted your hand, not your shadow. The father raised his head slowly, his eyes glistening with tears. And I wanted you to carry my dreams without realizing they were too heavy for your shoulders. The Buddha's voice came softly, yet firm enough to hold their hearts in place. When bonds break under expectation, both suffer. The son feels unseen. The father feels betrayed. Yet neither is truly at fault. The fault lies in the illusion that love means control, that care means shaping another's life into your own design. Release this illusion and the bond can mend. Hold on to it and both hearts will fracture. The father reached out, hesitating for a breath before resting his hand on his son's shoulder. This time, there was no pressure in the touch, no demand. It was simply a hand, trembling, offering presence. The boy did not resist. He leaned into it, and though the bond was still fragile, it was no longer broken. The Buddha watched them with calm eyes. Expectation is a seed of stress not only in families, but in all relationships. Friends, lovers, colleagues. When we expect others to live according to our script, we bind them and we bind ourselves. But when we allow them to be as they are, love breathes freely again. The boy asked softly, "Then what do we do when we feel the bond has already broken?" The Buddha answered, "You begin again. You lay down the chains of expectation and pick up the thread of presence. Meet them where they are, not where you wish they were. See them as they are now, and walk with them from this place. Every moment is a chance to begin again." The father bowed deeply, the gesture filled not with ritual, but with humility. "I will try. I will see him not as my dream, but as my son." The boy's eyes filled with quiet tears, but his lips carried the faintest smile. The Buddha let the moment settle. Then his voice returned to its slow rhythm of teaching. "So you see, broken bonds can mend if you release the chains that broke them. But stress does not only rise from the mind and heart. it also comes from the body itself. Pain, sickness, weakness, these two weigh heavily, and if the mind clings to them, stress deepens. The boy frowned slightly, curious. But teacher, how can we be free of stress when the body is in pain? Is that not impossible? The Buddha looked into the darkened grove as though seeing far beyond it. Pain is part of life. Illness, aging, and even death cannot be avoided. But suffering comes not from the pain itself, but from the way the mind holds it. When you understand this, you begin to free yourself. The father drew a sharp breath. The boy leaned forward, eager to hear. Before we step into that lesson, pause here for a moment. Have you ever felt a bond grow heavy under the weight of expectation? Did it strain or even break? If so, you know this root of stress. Share your story in the comments. You may remind someone else that broken bonds can be mended. The Buddha's voice lowered into the night. Now let us turn to the body itself and see how physical pain, when misunderstood, can become another chain of stress. Pain of the body. The night deepened, the air cooling as shadows thickened across the grove. The father and son leaned in, their hearts still raw from the weight of broken expectations. The Buddha's voice came low, unhurried, steady as a slow drum. The fifth root of stress is pain of the body. When the body suffers, the mind easily follows. Illness, injury, or weakness can capture the mind until it circles endlessly around suffering. The boy frowned, his eyes downcast. He knew well the ache of his tired limbs, the weakness that clung to him even after sleep. He whispered, "It feels like my body betrays me, as though I am old before my time." The Buddha regarded him gently. The body is not betrayal. The body is life itself, moving through its seasons. Pain, sickness, and aging are not punishments. They are woven into the fabric of being alive. To resist them is to resist life itself. But when the mind clings to pain, makes a nest out of it, then stress multiplies. The father leaned forward, his voice trembling. "But teacher, if pain cannot be avoided, are we to suffer forever?" The Buddha shook his head slightly, the faintest smile softening his words. "Pain is a visitor. Suffering is the house you build for it. When you accept pain as part of life, you loosen its grip. When you cling to it, you turn it into a prison." The boy lifted his eyes, puzzled. "How can I not cling to it? When my body aches, I cannot think of anything else." The Buddha spoke in images they could hold. Imagine a man with a thorn in his foot. If he continues walking, every step hurts. That is pain. But if he also curses the thorn, blames the ground, imagines a life without it, and fills his mind with anger, the suffering grows tenfold. The thorn remains small, but the storm in his mind makes it unbearable. To see the thorn clearly, to care for it without anger, that is how pain remains only pain and does not grow into stress. The father closed his eyes, remembering the times he had let his own aches make him bitter, snapping at his family, letting small pains poison his heart. The Buddha's voice slowed further. "You must understand. Life includes pain. Birth is pain. Growth is pain. Aging is pain. And yes, death itself is pain. These truths cannot be avoided, but they need not destroy peace. If you know pain is part of the path, you no longer fight it as an enemy. You meet it as a teacher." The boy's breathing slowed. He thought of his constant fatigue, the sharp aches that made him feel old. For the first time, he considered that perhaps these were not punishments, but signals, reminders to live differently, to tend to himself with care. The Buddha leaned back slightly, letting the night fill with sound again, the distant call of an owl, the rustle of leaves overhead. The body must be cared for. Exercise, rest, and good food are not luxuries. They are practices of respect. When you care for the body, it serves you well. When you neglect it, stress grows stronger. But even when pain comes, as it always will, remember, you can choose not to build a prison of fear around it. The father nodded slowly, his eyes thoughtful. Then the key is not to deny pain, but to meet it without fear. The Buddha inclined his head. Yes, pain is real. Suffering is optional. The moment you understand this difference, you free your mind from one of its heaviest chains. The boy let out a long breath, as though something inside him had loosened. His father placed a hand on his back again, not with urgency, but with quiet reassurance. The Buddha's voice softened to a near whisper. So you see, physical pain can be endured, but when the mind clings to it, stress takes root. Release the clinging, and peace remains even in the presence of being. The forest held stillness once more, the lesson sinking deep. Before we step onward, take a moment yourself. Have you ever found that a small ache, when obsessed over, felt larger than life? That is the mind turning pain into suffering. Share your reflection in the comments. You may remind someone else that they too can loosen their grip. The Buddha let his eyes rest on the boy and father again. Now let us look to the next root. It is not born from pain, but from impatience. It comes when one rushes forward without clarity, acting before truly seeing. That too leads to stress. Acceptance of suffering. The grove was wrapped in darkness now, save for the pale glow of moonlight spilling through the leaves. The Buddha's face seemed illuminated from within, calm and steady, as if he carried his own light. His voice was low but clear, each word falling like drops into still water. You must see clearly. Suffering is part of life. Pain, sickness, aging, even death. These are not mistakes in the design. They are the design itself. To reject them is to reject reality. And when you fight reality, you are certain to lose. That struggle is where stress is born. The boy leaned forward, his young face tense. But teacher, if suffering is certain, how can anyone live with peace? How can I not be afraid, knowing more pain will come? The Buddha's gaze turned toward him, kind and unwavering. Peace does not come from the absence of suffering. Peace comes from accepting it as it is. When you stop demanding that life be something else, you discover freedom. The storm may still rage, but you no longer stand against it with clenched fists. You allow it to pass, and in that allowing, you are unbroken. The father exhaled heavily, his breath trembling. He thought of his own years, of illnesses that had visited his household, of the death of loved ones. Each time he had cursed the unfairness of it. Each time he had grown bitter. But now, hearing the words, he realized that bitterness had not lessened the pain. It had only added to it. The Buddha spoke again, his tone carrying the strength of compassion. Do you mourn sickness as though it were a thief? It is not a thief. It is a teacher. Do you fear death as though it were an intruder? It is not an intruder. It is part of the very path you walk. If you live every day fearing these truths, your life will shrink. If you accept them, your life expands, even in the face of sorrow. Even in, and the boy lowered his gaze, thinking of his own frail body, the fatigue that haunted him. He whispered, so my weakness is not proof that I am broken? The Buddha's voice softened further. No, your weakness is proof that you are alive. Every being knows weakness. To accept it is not to give up. It is to stop wounding yourself twice. Once by the pain, and once by the fight against the pain. The father placed his hand on his son's shoulder. His voice broke as he said, I see now that I have feared your weakness, and in my fear, I pressed you harder. I thought I could shield you from suffering, but I only added more. The boy looked at him, and for once, his eyes did not carry resentment. There was only a quiet sadness, and beneath it, a glimmer of forgiveness. The Buddha let the moment rest. Then he said, "When you understand suffering as a natural part of life, you no longer live in constant dread. The fear of pain often weighs more than pain itself. Release that fear, and suffering loses half its power." The forest stirred with a gentle wind. Leaves brushed against one another, whispering softly. It was as if nature itself affirmed the truth in the master's words. The boy drew in a slow breath. "Then I must learn to meet pain without fear." The Buddha inclined his head. "Yes, meet it without fear, and you will see it for what it is, a passing moment, not a permanent chain. Learn this, and you will walk with freedom even through hardship." The father bowed deeply, his forehead nearly touching the earth. His voice was hoarse but full of resolve. "I will not fear what must come. I will walk beside my son, not trying to erase his pain, but learning to accept it with him." The Buddha's expression softened into the faintest smile. That is the beginning of wisdom. He let silence flow once more, then added, "You have now seen that pain, when misunderstood, multiplies stress, but when accepted, it becomes a teacher. Yet there are other routes to see. The next rises not from pain, but from haste. Many people rush into plans without understanding, and when those plans fail, stress blooms. This is the sixth route." Before we continue, pause here with me. Have you ever noticed how fear of suffering often feels heavier than the suffering itself? If so, you have tasted this truth. Share your reflection in the comments. You may offer comfort to another listener carrying the same weight tonight. The Buddha's gaze drifted toward the boy and father once again, then out into the silent night. Now, let us turn to haste and see how rushing without clarity can fill the heart with restlessness. Rushing ahead. The Buddha's words lingered in the night air, and then he shifted, his voice carrying a firmer note. The sixth root of stress is rushing ahead without clarity. Many people hurry into plans, decisions, and actions before they have taken the time to see them clearly. And when those plans unravel, they blame themselves, or fate, or others. But the real cause lies in their own haste. The father's brow furrowed. He thought of moments in his life when he had leapt into decisions without reflection, only to suffer disappointment later. The boy too nodded slightly, recalling how he often rushed into tasks out of anxiety, afraid of being left behind. The Buddha continued, slow and steady. Imagine a man who wishes to build a house. He gathers wood and stone, but never looks at the foundation. He hammers quickly, walls rising with speed. From the outside, it seems progress is swift, but the first storm comes and the house collapses. His labor was real, but his wisdom was absent. This is what it means to rush without clarity. The boy raised his eyes. "But teacher, if we wait too long, do we not lose opportunities? How do we know when to move?" The Buddha's gaze softened. Waiting is not the same as wasting time. True waiting is seeing clearly before stepping. Like the archer who pulls back the bow, patience makes the release strong. If he lets go too soon, the arrow falls weakly. If he waits too long, his arm trembles. But when he finds the right moment, the arrow flies straight. Patience is not delay. It is wisdom in timing. The father exhaled heavily, realizing how often he had mistaken speed for strength. He remembered pressing his son to act quickly, to decide quickly, to achieve quickly, never leaving room for clarity. His chest ached with regret. The Buddha spoke again, his words calm but unyielding. When you rush without clarity, you invite stress. Failure comes not from fate, but from blindness, and yet, when failure arrives, you punish yourself, as though you are cursed. You are not cursed, you are only hurried. The boy whispered, "Then I must learn to pause, but when I pause, I feel guilty. as if I am wasting time. The Buddha inclined his head. That guilt is the voice of haste speaking. The mind believes that moving fast is the same as moving well. But the truth is this: slowness with clarity is stronger than speed with blindness. Do not mistake motion for progress. The forest stirred with a faint breeze, and the sound of branches shifting seemed to underline the teaching. The father looked at his son with sorrow. I told you to hurry again and again. I thought I was teaching you diligence, but I see now I was only teaching you to rush. I made you fear stillness. The boy's throat tightened, but he placed his hand over his father's, a small gesture that carried forgiveness. The Buddha let the moment breathe before speaking again. To live without stress, you must learn to pause, to look deeply before you step, to ask, what is the nature of this path? What are its fruits? If you see clearly, even failure will not shake you, for you will know you walked with awareness. The boy nodded slowly. Then stillness is not weakness. It is preparation. The Buddha's faint smile returned. Yes. Stillness is the strength that guides motion. Rushing is the weakness that disguises itself as strength. The night grew quieter, as if the grove itself was holding on to every word. Before we move further, take a moment yourself. Reflect on a time when you rushed into something without clarity. Did it lead to stress, regret, or collapse? If so, you have seen this route at work. Share your reflection in the comments. You may remind someone else to pause before they leap. The Buddha turned his gaze back to the father and son. His voice carried a gentle gravity. Now, you have seen the route of rushing ahead, but there is another close beside it. It is not about moving too fast, but about not moving at all. It is the habit of postponing, delaying, waiting for tomorrow what should be done today. That is the seventh root of stress. Pause and plan. The grove seemed to hold its breath, the silence wrapping gently around father, son, and master. The Buddha's voice came once more, slow and deliberate. The cure for rushing ahead is simple, but it requires courage. You must pause. You must give your mind time to see clearly before your hands begin to move. This pause is not weakness, it is preparation. To pause and plan is to give yourself the gift of clarity. The boy frowned slightly, his brow tight with thought. But teacher, I feel restless when I pause. My mind tells me that if I am not moving, I am failing. The silence feels unbearable. The Buddha nodded, understanding. That is because your mind has been trained to equate speed with value. But consider this. A farmer does not throw seeds into the soil without thought. He studies the seasons, he feels the earth, he waits for the right rain. His pause is not waste, it is wisdom. Without it, the harvest fails. So too in life. When you pause with awareness, every action that follows is strong. The father bowed his head, his voice heavy with memory. I see now how often I demanded haste. I told my son to act quickly, to make choices quickly, believing speed meant strength. I never taught him to sit with silence, to study the ground before he planted. I see that my impatience became his burden. The Buddha's gaze was steady, his words calm. Impatience builds stress. Patience builds freedom. To pause and plan is to respect the weight of your choices. If you move without reflection, you build houses on sand, but when you pause, you see the foundation clearly, and your house stands. The boy lowered his eyes, his voice soft. Then my restlessness is not strength, but fear. Fear that I will be left behind if I do not rush. The Buddha leaned closer, his tone warm but firm. Fear is not a guide, it is a chain. When you let fear decide, you run in circles. But when you let clarity decide, even small steps take you far. Do not fear the pause. It is the bow drawn back before release. It is the silence before the song begins. The father placed a trembling hand on his son's shoulder. I will no longer demand speed from you. I will walk beside you, even if your steps are slower. Let us learn to pause together. The boy looked at him, and for the first time, his lips curved in the faintest smile. Then perhaps I will not be afraid to stand still. The forest seemed to respond, the wind carrying a soft hush through the leaves. The Buddha allowed the stillness to deepen, then said, "Remember, pause and plan not only in great decisions, but in daily life. Before you speak, pause to see if your words bring peace. Before you act, pause to see if your action builds harmony. Each pause is a gate to wisdom. Each pause is a shield against stress." The boy took a slow breath, repeating softly, "Pause and plan. Before I move." The words felt like an anchor, something to steady him in the restless tide of his thoughts. The Buddha nodded. "Yes, practice this daily, and clarity will become your companion. Stress will find no place to grow." The father and son both bowed slightly, humbled. Before we move forward, take a moment for yourself. Think back. Was there a time when you rushed into something and later wished you had paused? How would clarity have changed the path? Share your reflection in the comments. Your story may be the reminder another listener needs tonight. The Buddha's voice grew quiet, though the firmness in it remained. Now, we turn to another route. If rushing ahead creates stress, so does its opposite, putting off what must be done. Postponing today's duty to tomorrow, tomorrow's duty to the next day, until life itself becomes a chain of delays. This is the seventh root of stress. The habit of delay. The grove seemed almost timeless, the sounds of night flowing like a steady river. The Buddha's voice came clear in that stillness, measured and slow. The seventh root of stress is delay. The habit of postponing what must be done is like carrying a stone in your pocket. You tell yourself it is small, that you will drop it tomorrow, but tomorrow you add another and another. Soon your pockets are heavy and your body bends under the weight. This is the burden of delay. The boy's eyes fell to the ground. He knew this habit well. Assignments left untouched, chores pushed aside, promises delayed until the pressure grew unbearable. His chest tightened at the memory of sleepless nights spent racing to finish what he could have done days before. The father also lowered his gaze. He had often scolded his son for procrastination, never realizing how much fear and shame came with it. He had seen only laziness, not the weight of delay itself. The Buddha continued, "When you postpone, you create two labors instead of one. First is the work itself. Second is the endless thinking about the work, the guilt, the worry, the restless energy. The task does not vanish. It grows heavier in the mind, and when at last you begin, you are already weary, already stressed before the true labor has even started." The boy swallowed hard, whispering, "Yes, that is exactly how it feels." The Buddha inclined his head, his gaze kind but steady. "You must see clearly. Delay is not rest. Delay is a thief. It steals today's peace and tomorrow's strength. Rest brings renewal. Delay brings only anxiety." The father lifted his eyes, his voice trembling. "But teacher, how does one break such a habit? The mind feels trapped in it, returning again and again." The Buddha answered with calm certainty. "You must replace delay with discipline, not through force, but through presence. Begin with small steps. Take one task and finish it before the day ends. Do not let the sun set on what could be completed. Each day you do this, the habit of delay weakens and the habit of presence grows." The boy hesitated. "But sometimes I feel paralyzed. Even small tasks feel too heavy. I tell myself I will begin later, and later never comes." The Buddha leaned closer, his words soft, almost a whisper. "When the mountain feels too high, begin with one stone. Do not think of the whole. Think only of this step, this breath, this act. The mind that says later is only trying to escape. Bring it back to now. Even the smallest act done now is greater than the grandest plan delayed. The boy's eyes flickered with a faint spark of hope. He thought of his unfinished tasks and realized he could start with something as simple as washing one dish, writing one sentence, taking one steady breath. The father touched his son's arm gently. Then we will face the stones together, one by one. The Buddha's gaze softened further. Yes. And with each small act completed, the mind grows lighter, the body grows freer. Stress loses its grip. The night air shifted, carrying the scent of earth and leaves. The lesson seemed to settle deep into the silence. Before we move on, pause yourself. Think of something you have delayed, something that waits quietly in the back of your mind, growing heavier each day. What if you chose one small step toward it now? Share your reflection in the comments. You may encourage another listener to take their own step tonight. The Buddha let the stillness stretch, then said, "Delay is the seventh root." Yet even when tasks are not postponed, stress still arises from another cause. This last root is the storm of thoughts themselves, the endless spinning of the mind into past and future. To understand this storm is to see the final chain of stress, a cycle of pressure. The grove seemed to breathe with them, the hush of the night folding around every word. The Buddha's voice carried on, steady as the slow turning of the moon. When you delay, you create a cycle of pressure. The work waits. The mind frets. The guilt grows. Each delay adds weight to the next, until the smallest task feels like a mountain. And when the deadline comes close, the mind panics, the body strains, and you suffer doubly, first in worry, then in hurried labor. The boy shifted uneasily, his chest tight. He knew this cycle too well. Nights of restless tossing, days of rushing, his mind a constant storm of what he had not done. He whispered, "It feels like being trapped. Even when I know I should begin, I can't. Then, when I finally act, I am already broken." The father bowed his head, regret pressing down. "I called you lazy when I saw you delay. I thought harsh words would force you forward. I did not see you were trapped in this cycle. I added to the pressure when you already carried too much." The Buddha's gaze turned to them both, steady and calm. "This is the truth of delay. It does not free you, it binds you. It feeds itself, a wheel spinning faster with each turn. But remember, every cycle can be broken. You do not need to shatter the wheel all at once. You need only place one hand upon it, slow it with one act in the present moment." The boy raised his eyes. "But how? When the mind screams to wait, how can I move?" The Buddha leaned slightly forward. "You must practice beginning, not finishing, only beginning. When the mountain overwhelms you, take one step. When the page is blank, write one word. When the dish is dirty, wash one bowl. Beginning is the key. Once begun, the cycle weakens. Each small act is a stone in the river, steady beneath your feet." The boy breathed deeply, considering. He thought of nights wasted in guilt and imagined starting with only one sentence, one simple task. The thought felt possible in a way grand plans never had. The father's hand pressed lightly on his son's shoulder. "We will practice beginning together. I will no longer measure you only by what you finish. I will honor the courage it takes to begin." The Buddha nodded, his faint smile carrying warmth. "Yes, honor the beginning, and the end will follow in its own time. Stress cannot live where presence begins." The forest stirred, a breeze carrying the sound of rustling leaves. It was as though the night itself approved of the teaching. The Buddha let his voice fall lower. This cycle of delay and pressure is the seventh root. When you see it clearly, you can step free. But even if you finish your work on time, even if you escape delay, there is still one more root that binds the mind. It is the most subtle, yet the most common. It is the endless storm of thoughts, the constant spinning of past and future that robs the present of peace. This is the eighth root of stress. The boy's eyes widened, his body leaning forward. The storm in my head, it never stops. Even when I am not working, it follows me. The Buddha's gaze held him gently. Yes, this storm is perhaps the greatest thief of all. To understand it is to begin the path to freedom. Before we step further, pause with me. Think of your own life. Have you ever delayed something until the pressure built so high it felt unbearable? That is the cycle of pressure. If you've lived it, you are not alone. Share your reflection in the comments. You may remind someone else that beginning, even in small steps, is the way out. The Buddha's voice lowered again, slow and steady. Now let us turn to the storm of thoughts and see how the restless mind builds chains heavier than any burden of the body. Storm of thoughts. The grove was hushed, yet within that hush, the boy's heart thudded with recognition. He leaned forward, his voice barely more than a whisper. Teacher, this storm of thoughts, it never leaves me. Even when I lie down at night, my mind keeps racing. I think of what I did wrong, what I must do tomorrow, and things that may never even happen. It feels like a storm that has no end. The Buddha met his eyes with calm. Yes, this is the eighth root of stress. The mind, untamed, spins endlessly. It runs into the past, replaying wounds. It leaps into the future, imagining fears. It creates worlds of its own making and drags you through them as if they were real. This storm is the most common burden of all, for it can live in anyone, rich or poor, young or old. The father's shoulders slumped. He too knew the storm's sleepless nights spent calculating debts, worrying over harvests, replaying old arguments. He realized he had not only lived inside his own storm, but had passed its restless winds onto his son. The Buddha continued, his words steady as stones placed carefully one upon another. Thoughts are not enemies. They are like clouds in the sky, but when you cling to them, when you mistake them for the sky itself, the storm grows thick. Stress is not the thought itself. It is your attachment to the thought, your belief that it must be fought or followed. The boy frowned. But how can I stop them? They come without asking me. They fill my head before I even notice. The Buddha's gaze softened. You cannot stop the clouds from passing, but you can stop chasing each one. Let them drift, let them come, let them go. Sit as the sky sits vast, open, untroubled by the clouds that cross it. The boy's breath slowed, though his brow still held tension. The father asked, his voice rough, "But teacher, if we do not chase thoughts, will we not lose control of our lives? How will we remember what is important?" The Buddha smiled faintly. To let thoughts pass is not to forget wisdom. It is to release noise. The mind is sharper when it is still. A lake reflects the moon only when the water is calm. So too does the mind see truth only when it is quiet. Chasing every ripple only clouds the view. The boy closed his eyes briefly, imagining his thoughts as clouds. He felt the urge to chase them, but also glimpsed for the first time the possibility of letting them drift. The Buddha spoke again. The practice is simple, though not easy. Sit with your breath. Notice when the storm begins. Do not fight the thoughts, and do not follow them. Each time you notice you have wandered, return to the breath. Again and again, return. Slowly, the storm weakens. Slowly, the sky clears. The forest seemed to echo the teaching with its stillness. Even the insect's chorus softened, as if bowing to the silence. The father touched his son's hand, his voice thick with emotion. "We will sit together. We will learn this. Perhaps we can both calm our storms." The boy looked at him and nodded, his lips curving into a faint but genuine smile. The Buddha let the moment linger, then spoke once more. "Now you have seen all 8 roots. Ambition without end, envy, work without joy, expectation, pain of the body, rushing ahead, delay, and the storm of thoughts. Each one widens the gap between body and mind. But knowing them is the first step to freedom. To see clearly is to loosen their hold." The boy's eyes widened. "But teacher, there are so many. I am young, and already I feel overwhelmed. How can I guard against them all?" The Buddha looked upon him with kindness. "Do not fear the number. Begin with one. Begin with the breath, the act of bringing body and mind together in the present. When you eat, only eat. When you walk, only walk. This practice alone will weaken all 8 roots, for it closes the gap they thrive in. Presence is the cure." The boy inhaled deeply, his chest rising with something that felt almost like relief. "Before we continue, pause here yourself. Have you felt the storm of thoughts spinning endlessly between past and future? If so, know that you are not alone. Share your reflection in the comments. You may remind someone else that even storms can pass when we learn to let clouds drift." The Buddha's voice lowered once more, quiet but firm. "You now know the roots of stress, but knowledge alone is not enough. The question is how to live with this wisdom, how to practice it daily until it becomes natural. That is the path forward." The tamed mind. The grove held its silence, and the moonlight stretched long shadows across the earth. The boy sat straighter now, his breath a little steadier than before. The father leaned close, his eyes soft with concern, yet also carrying a new spark of hope. The Buddha's voice, low and even, flowed like a steady river. "The storm of thoughts is restless, yes, but even the wildest horse can be tamed. The mind is the same. Left untended, it runs anywhere it pleases, but with care, patience, and training, it learns to walk beside you, calm and steady." The boy tilted his head, uncertain. "But teacher, when I try to control my thoughts, they only grow louder. The harder I push them away, the stronger they return." The Buddha nodded. "That is because you are not taming the horse. You are chasing it. Control is not about force. It is about guidance. Each time your mind runs, you do not fight it. You simply take the reins gently and bring it back. Again and again. Do not punish it for wandering. A horse learns not by the whip, but by the steady hand." The father inhaled deeply, his chest rising with realization. "Then my harshness has only made his storm worse. I thought discipline meant force, but now I see discipline can be gentle." The Buddha's gaze rested on him with kindness. "Yes, gentle discipline is the strongest discipline. Each return to the breath, each moment of presence, is like guiding the horse back to the path. In time, the horse learns to stay. In time, the mind grows still." The boy closed his eyes for a moment, letting his breath move in and out. He imagined his thoughts as wild horses galloping through fields. Instead of chasing, he pictured himself holding the reins, steady and patient. For the first time, he felt he might be able to sit without being carried away. The Buddha continued, "This is why we practice meditation. It is not to destroy thoughts, but to guide the mind gently home. Each breath is the rope. Each return is the training. Slowly, the storm clears. Slowly, the mind becomes a friend instead of an enemy." The forest echoed the teaching with its quiet rhythm. The call of an owl in the distance, the soft rustle of branches overhead. The night itself seemed to breathe with them. The father bowed his head. "I will sit with him. I too need this training. My storm has been loud for many years." The Buddha inclined his head. Then sit together, guide each other. A tamed mind is not a gift for one, it is a blessing for all who walk beside you. When your mind is calm, your presence brings peace to others. Stress does not remain only within, it spreads. So too does peace. The boy opened his eyes, his face softer now. Then, every moment I return is a gift, not only to myself, but to my Father, to those around me. The Buddha's faint smile deepened. Yes. When you tame the mind, you tame the world you carry. And when your world is calm, others who touch it find calm too. The father placed his hand on his son's back. There was no demand in the touch, no burden, only warmth. The boy leaned into it, the bond between them mending quietly under the night sky. The Buddha let the silence rest again before speaking once more. You now see how the mind may be tamed, but you must also remember, taming is not a single act, it is a practice. Just as a musician plays daily to keep skill alive, you must practice daily to keep the mind steady. Without practice, the storm returns. With practice, the sky clears again and again. The boy nodded slowly, repeating to himself, again and again, bring it back. The words became a quiet rhythm in his chest. Before we move on, pause with me. Have you ever felt your mind racing like a wild horse, dragging you where you did not wish to go? If so, know you are not alone. Share your reflection in the comments. You may remind someone else that the horse can be guided, that the storm can calm. The Buddha's gaze grew distant, his tone turning softer still. You have seen the 8 roots, and you have learned the practice of return, but now the question is not only about knowledge, it is about living. You must learn how to walk with this wisdom in daily life. That is the true freedom from stress. Father's plea. The grove was quiet except for the soft hum of insects, their chorus rising and falling like the breath of the earth itself. The father shifted, his knees stiff from sitting so long, but his heart heavier still. He looked at his son, who sat with a calmer face than before, and then turned his eyes back to the Buddha. His voice trembled, but it carried a deep sincerity. Teacher, you have spoken of 8 roots of stress, and your words are like light cutting through fog. But my son, he is still so young. His strength is small, and his mind restless. How can he remember all of this? How can he guard against so many roots when even I, with years behind me, struggle to hold on to your teachings? The boy lowered his head, ashamed. It is true. I feel overwhelmed. Each root feels like a chain I cannot lift. I am afraid I will fail, no matter how hard I try. The Buddha regarded them both with stillness, letting their fears rest openly in the night air. Then, with the gentleness of a hand brushing dust from a window, he spoke. Do not mistake the path for a burden. The teachings are not weights to carry, they are doors to open. You need not open every door at once. Begin with one. Begin with presence. When you bring your mind back to your body in this moment, you weaken all 8 roots at once. The boy raised his eyes, searching the master's face. So, if I only learn this, if I only practice being here, will it be enough? The Buddha's faint smile deepened. Yes, when you eat, only eat. When you walk, only walk. When you breathe, only breathe. This alone is the medicine. Presence is the thread that mends every chain. The father exhaled, a sound caught between relief and sorrow. I feared there was no simple way that my son would drown in these roots before he learned to stand. But if presence is the key, perhaps even a young man can walk this path. The Buddha inclined his head. Not only the young, even the old who are weary may begin again. Presence is not bound by age or strength. It is bound only by willingness, and willingness can be found in any heart. The boy's lips parted, his voice soft but steady. Then I will try. I may not master everything, but I can begin with one breath, one step, one meal. The father placed his hand on his son's shoulder, the gesture filled not with pressure, but with support. And I will try with you. Perhaps we can both learn to live this way. The Buddha's eyes warmed at the sight. Yes. Walk together. Support one another. A single person practicing presence can calm their own storm. Two practicing together can calm an entire household. This is how peace spreads not from great speeches, but from quiet acts repeated daily. The forest stirred, the trees whispering softly in the night breeze. The boy sat taller, his chest rising with a steadier breath. The father wiped his eyes quietly, as though a great weight had lifted. The Buddha let silence cover them once more, then spoke. So you see, the path is not too heavy. It is simple. Live in the present. Return to it again and again. This alone is enough. He paused, his gaze falling deeply on the boy. But you must remember, simple does not mean easy. The mind will wander. You will forget, and that is not failure. Each time you return, you are already succeeding. The boy nodded slowly, the words finding a home inside him. Before we move on, pause yourself. Have you ever felt overwhelmed by too many lessons, too many goals, too many demands? Did you find relief when you focused on one simple thing? Share that in the comments. You may remind someone else that simplicity is strength. The Buddha shifted slightly, his robe catching the moonlight. His voice softened into the rhythm of a lullaby. Now you have heard the Father's plea, and the simple path I have given. But perhaps you still wonder, what does this practice look like in daily life? Let us look more closely at how one simple act, done with presence, can transform stress into peace. A simple practice. The grove was wrapped in moonlight, each leaf shimmering faintly as though it had been brushed by silver. The boy's breathing was calmer now, yet his eyes still held questions. He looked at the Buddha, hesitant but hopeful. Teacher, if presence is the answer, then show me how. Oh, tell me what I must actually do when I wake tomorrow, when I sit to eat, when I walk. Show me how to begin. The Buddha's gaze softened. His voice flowed low and slow, as if each syllable was laid gently on the earth. Then listen closely. The way is not hidden. It is already within you. To live without stress, do one thing at a time and give it your whole being. If your mind wanders, as it will, bring it back. That is the practice. The boy tilted his head, uncertain. It sounds too simple. Can something so small truly make a difference? The Buddha inclined his head. It is small, yes. But what is small, when practiced deeply, becomes great. A single seed is small, yet from it grows the tree that shades the whole village. Presence may seem small, but it grows into peace large enough to cover your life. The father leaned forward, his voice trembling with hope. Then give us examples, teacher. Tell us how to live this presence. The Buddha raised his hand slightly, his eyes glinting in the pale light. When you eat, only eat. Do not let your mind wander to tomorrow's worries or yesterday's mistakes. Taste the food. Notice its texture, its scent, its warmth. Let your body and mind sit at the same table. If you wander, gently bring yourself back to the meal before you. The boy imagined sitting at his next meal, his restless thoughts already stirring. He nodded slowly. I think I can try that, just to be there with the food. The Buddha continued. When you walk, only walk. Feel your feet touch the ground. Notice the air against your skin, the rhythm of your steps. Do not hurry to arrive somewhere else. The walk itself is the arrival. The father closed his eyes, picturing himself walking beside his son, no longer rushing, no longer measuring the distance. The Buddha's tone softened further. When you breathe, only breathe. Do not chase thoughts. Do not force them away. Simply follow the rise and fall of your breath like waves touching the shore. Each time your mind wanders, guide it gently home. Again and again, return. This is the simplest and greatest practice. The boy's chest rose and fell slowly as he tried it, just for a moment. His mind wandered almost instantly, but he remembered the words, "Bring it back." He returned to the breath, then returned again. A flicker of peace touched him. The father watched with moist eyes, seeing his son sit still in a way he had not seen in years. The Buddha leaned closer, his voice as soft as the rustle of leaves. Do not expect perfection. Expect only the chance to return. Each return is victory. Each moment of presence weakens the roots of stress. In this way, even a young man may live with peace. Even an old man may find rest. The boy whispered, "Then I am not doomed to this wait forever." The Buddha's faint smile deepened. No one is doomed. The mind is a wanderer, yes, but it always remembers the way home. The forest seemed to sigh in agreement, the night air stirring gently. Before we move further, pause here with me. Try it now, even as you listen. Take one breath fully without chasing another thought. Just one. Did you notice the calm that entered? Share your experience in the comments. You may show someone else that peace is already close at hand. The Buddha let the silence stretch before he spoke again. You have now heard the practice of presence, but to live it, you must see it not only in food or in walking or in breathing. You must see it in all things. Every act can become practice when body and mind walk together. This is how life itself becomes meditation. Eating, walking, living. The night wrapped itself more deeply around the grove, and the air carried the cool calm of silence. The boy leaned forward, eager now, no longer weighed down by despair, but curious, like a student ready to be shown the path step by step. "Teacher," he asked softly, "you say to eat, only eat. To walk, only walk. To breathe, only breathe. Show me what it means to live this way, not in ideas, but in the rhythm of daily life." The Buddha's eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight. His voice dropped to a gentle cadence, each word slow and unhurried. When you lift a bowl of rice, feel the weight of it in your hand. Notice its warmth. When you take a bite, do not rush to the next. Taste it fully. Let the body and the mind arrive together at the same table. Then the meal nourishes not only your body, but your spirit. If your mind runs to tomorrow's chores while your body eats, you will rise from the table still hungry. The boy closed his eyes briefly, imagining himself at breakfast, his thoughts scattering as they usually did. He pictured instead returning to the simple act of chewing, tasting, being present. He smiled faintly at the thought of a meal that truly fed him. The Buddha continued, "When you walk, do not walk only to arrive. Each step is arrival itself. Feel the ground beneath your feet. Feel the air on your face. Walk not as if chasing the future, but as if greeting the earth with every step. In this way, the distance between your body and your mind disappears." The father's eyes softened. He had often rushed, dragging his son along, measuring every step as progress or failure. He now saw how much peace had been lost in haste. The Buddha's tone remained calm. And when you breathe, breathe as though it is the first time you have noticed it. The air enters, the air leaves, nothing more, nothing less. Each breath is life arriving and departing. If you anchor your mind in the breath, you will discover that peace has been with you all along. The boy placed his hand over his chest, feeling his breath rise and fall. His mind wandered almost instantly, but he remembered, return. He brought it back to the breath. For a moment, he felt a strange stillness, like standing in the center of a storm where the winds cannot reach. The Buddha leaned slightly closer. Living this way does not require more time. It requires only attention. To eat, walk, and breathe in presence is to live fully. And when you live fully in small moments, the great storms of stress cannot uproot you. The father bowed his head, whispering, "I see now that I too have been absent from my own life. My body here, my mind elsewhere. No wonder my son inherited my restlessness." The Buddha's voice carried the weight of reassurance. "And now that you see, you can begin again. Every meal is a chance. Every step is a chance. Every breath is a chance. You need not wait for tomorrow. You can live this way now." The boy's lips curved into a fragile but real smile. "Then I am not too late." The Buddha returned the smile. "No one is too late. Life is always beginning again. In this moment, in this breath." The forest exhaled around them, as though even the trees practiced this truth. Before we go further, pause with me. Try it for yourself. With your next bite of food, truly taste it. With your next step, truly feel it. With your next breath, truly notice it. Share in the comments which of these eating, walking, or breathing you feel drawn to try first. You may inspire another to begin their practice tonight. The Buddha rested his hands in his lap, his eyes serene. So you see, even the simplest acts become practice when body and mind are together. But presence not only transforms daily acts, it also heals the gap itself. When body and mind unite, stress dissolves like morning mist under sunlight. That is the union you must come to know. Union of body and mind. The grove seemed to glow under the pale sweep of moonlight. The boy sat quietly, no longer slouched, no longer heavy with despair. His breathing was deeper, steadier, as though some of the fog inside him had begun to lift. The father kept his hand gently on his son's shoulder, but for once it was not to push or to guide. It was simply to be present. The Buddha's voice flowed slowly, with pauses that allowed the night itself to breathe. You have heard what it means to eat with presence, to walk with presence, to breathe with presence. Now you must see what these practices bring, the union of body and mind. When body and mind walk together, stress dissolves. This union is the end of the distance, the healing of the division. It is like a broken string tied whole again. The instrument can sing. The boy tilted his head, listening with a focus he had not known before. But teacher, how can I know when my body and mind are united? What will it feel like? The Buddha's faint smile appeared. You will know because there will be no resistance. The task may be simple. The body may grow tired, but you will not feel torn in two. You will feel whole. Your breath will steady. Your steps will soften. And in that wholeness, peace will rise naturally. The father thought of the countless days when he had felt torn, his body working in the fields, his mind consumed with debts, worries, comparisons. He realized he had never truly lived in union. His chest tightened, then eased, as though admitting this truth gave him permission to begin again. The Buddha continued, his voice as soft as falling leaves. Union is not complicated. It is not a distant mountain. It is here, in this breath, in this step, in this very moment. You need not chase it. You need only return, again and again, until body and mind remember each other. The boy closed his eyes, bringing his focus to his breath. For a moment he felt the pull of thoughts, the storm that so often dragged him away, but he remembered the teaching, return. He guided himself back. He noticed the rise of his chest, the cool air in his nose, the warmth as it left. Just for that breath, body and mind were together. He opened his eyes slowly, and a softness touched his face. The Buddha looked upon him with calm approval. Yes, that is the union. Small, simple, yet powerful. Do not seek to hold it forever. Seek only to return. Each return is a victory. Each return heals the distance. The father whispered, his voice breaking. Then all along, we were not broken beyond repair. We were only divided, and now we can be whole again. The Buddha inclined his head gently. Yes, division is the root of stress. Union is the cure. When body and mind walk together, life regains its balance. Stress falls away like morning mist under sunlight. The chains loosen, the heart rests. The boy's lips curved in a real smile this time, fragile but alive. He turned to his father and said softly, "Then we can begin, both of us. One breath at a time." The father pulled him into a brief embrace, his eyes wet, his voice too full to speak. The forest stirred, as though the trees themselves had witnessed the healing of a bond. The insects sang louder for a moment, then softened again. The night held them all in a blanket of peace. The Buddha let the silence expand, then spoke once more. "So you see, the union of body and mind is the medicine. This is how you live free from the 8 roots. This is how you mend the bonds between yourself and others. This is how you meet life as whole. But remember, this path is not walked in isolation. Gratitude and reflection deepen it. You must learn to honor the gift of presence and to share what you have discovered." Before we move further, pause here with me. Close your eyes, if only for a breath. Notice your body sitting where it is. Notice your breath entering, leaving. Just one moment of union. Did you feel the difference? Share your reflection in the comments. You may be the reason someone else dares to try. The Buddha's gaze softened further, and his voice sank lower, like a gentle whisper meant only for them. Now let us turn to gratitude, to the practice of giving thanks for what has been healed. Gratitude is the soil in which presence grows strong. Gratitude and reflection. The grove was still, the moon now high above, spreading a silver path across the earth. The father and son sat close, their shoulders touching, and though no words passed between them, something unspoken was already mending. The Buddha's voice rose again, not hurried, not forceful, but slow and gentle, as if he were weaving the night itself into his teaching. Union of body and mind brings peace. But to keep that peace alive, you must water it with gratitude. Gratitude is the soil in which presence takes root and grows strong. The boy leaned forward, curious. "Teacher, I have always thought of what I lack, what I must do, what I fail to become. Gratitude feels far away from me. How can I learn it?" The Buddha's gaze rested on him. You learn gratitude not by seeking what is grand, but by noticing what is already here. The breath in your lungs, the air that cools your skin, the meal that sustains you, the hand of your father on your shoulder. These are not small, they are gifts. Gratitude is seeing what has always been present, but overlooked. The father lowered his head, realizing how often he had failed to give thanks. He had been so busy wishing his son to be different, he had forgotten to honor who his son already was. He whispered, "I see now that gratitude has been missing in my heart. I pushed for more instead of giving thanks for what I already had." The Buddha inclined his head. When gratitude is absent, envy grows, expectation grows, dissatisfaction grows. But when gratitude is present, these roots cannot thrive. Gratitude is the medicine for the restless mind. The boy's voice was soft. "So even if I cannot do everything, if I can be grateful for one breath, one step, one meal, I am already healing." The Buddha's smile deepened slightly. Yes, gratitude turns even the smallest act into practice. When you give thanks for one breath, you remind yourself that life is already here, already enough. And in that reminder, stress loses its grip. The father placed his hand on his son's knee, his voice breaking with emotion. Then let me begin now. I am grateful for you, my son. Not for what you may become, but for who you are, sitting here with me. The boy's eyes filled with tears and his lips curved into a trembling smile. And I am grateful for you, Father. Even in your pressure, I know it came from love. Tonight, I am grateful that we are learning together. The forest seemed to embrace them in its silence, the trees standing like patient witnesses to their exchange. The Buddha's voice carried into that silence, low and calm. Yes, gratitude heals bonds as surely as it heals minds. It is not only a feeling, it is a practice. Each day, name one thing for which you are thankful. Say it aloud if you can. Let it shape your heart. Gratitude does not erase hardship, but it softens it. It does not remove pain, but it reminds you that life is more than pain. The boy nodded slowly, repeating softly, "Gratitude is practice." The father closed his eyes, breathing deeply. He thought of all he had, and for the first time in many years, his heart was light. The Buddha let the night breathe with them, then added, "Now you have seen the roots of stress, and you have seen the cure. You have seen presence, gratitude, and the union of body and mind. But before our time closes, let me leave you with this. Every teaching is not an end, but a doorway. The question is whether you will walk through." Before we move to that final doorway, pause with me. Think now of one thing you are grateful for. Just one, no matter how small. Hold it in your heart. If you wish, share it in the comments. Your gratitude may remind another to find their own. The Buddha's voice lowered, softer now, almost like a lullaby. Now let us step into the final moment of this journey. Let us close the circle and rest in the quiet where the seeds of peace can take root. Closing. Whisper. The night in the grove was nearly complete. The moon had climbed to its highest place, and the forest seemed to hold its breath. The father and son sat side by side, shoulders touching, and the heaviness that had followed them for so long felt lighter now, like mist thinning at dawn. The Buddha's eyes moved between them, calm and steady, and his voice carried the softness of a final song. Every teaching you have heard tonight is not an end. It is a beginning. The door has opened, but you must choose each day to step through it. The boy's voice was quiet, but steady. "Teacher, I feel something inside me has shifted. The storm is not gone, but I see a path through it. I know I will stumble. I know I will forget. But now I believe I can return." The Buddha inclined his head, his smile faint but sure. "Yes, forgetting is not failure. Returning is the practice. Each time you come back to presence, you strengthen it. Each time you breathe with awareness, you close the distance between body and mind. This is the way." The father bowed deeply, his forehead nearly touching the earth. "I came here with despair, fearing I would lose my son. I leave tonight with hope, knowing we can walk this path together. For this, I give you my gratitude." The Buddha raised his hand in a gesture of blessing, his tone low and soothing. Walk with presence. Walk with gratitude. Walk with love. Stress cannot follow those who live in this way. Remember, one breath is enough. One step is enough. One moment is enough. The grove fell silent. The boy's shoulders relaxed fully for the first time, his face soft in the moonlight. His father breathed deeply, as though laying down a burden he had carried for years. And in that silence, the night itself seemed to cradle them, the stars shimmering above like watchful eyes. The Buddha's final words drifted into the air like a whisper. "Now rest. Let the mind settle. Let the body rest where it is. The storm will return, but so will your practice. Each return is peace. Each return is freedom." The boy closed his eyes. His father followed. The forest hummed its endless lullaby, and the Buddha sat in stillness, a quiet presence, a reminder that peace is always one breath away. Before we part tonight, pause with me. Dim the lights around you. Notice your breath, slow and steady. Feel your body where it rests. If this story has given you calm, leave a comment and share what stayed with you most. And if you wish to walk further on this path, subscribe and ring the bell so the next teaching can find you when the time is right. The grove faded into silence. The night deepened, and the story closed as softly as a curtain falling. End of script. Sweet dreams.